What's the formula or process to get people to do things just because they feel like it?
Well, it's really going to sound stupid.
Yeah. Smiling. Being nice. Yeah.
So smiling, neuroscience behind a smile. If you smile at somebody, you actually hit their mirror neurons. You start a smile in their brain.
Wow.
Smile is an involuntary response.
A mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons in their brain. It's the same as if the doctor hits your knee with a little hammer and your leg kicks forward. You didn't choose to have your leg kick forward. It's an involuntary response. So if somebody sees you and you smile, you've instantly hit their mirror neurons. You started a chemical change. Now they might fight it, and sometimes you got to get them 3 smiles.
Right.
But by a 3rd smile, you get them smiling too.
Yeah.
So you've already started the process then. And then your inner voice betrays your outer voice. When you say, how are you, to somebody at the Starbucks, your inner voice is saying, I'm trying to make your day better. I want you to be a happier person. They're going to feel it. If your inner voice is saying like, how are you today? I need my Starbucks coffee and I need to get out of here and I hate this line and I hate how long you guys, if that's in your voice, they're going to feel that. They're going to be pouring decaf in instead of the other kind.
Right.
So your entire approach, the neuroscience shows us the person is picking it up and responding. And so your body language, your tone of voice, the greatest negotiators in the world really maximize that because it's an invisible skill.
Yeah. But it's a skill you can teach, it sounds like.
And learn.
And learn.
You can teach it, you can learn it, you can practice it. All you got to do is get your repetitions in. John Foley's a Blue Angel pilot. I heard him speak about 4 years ago. He talked about how long does it take to build a habit? How much training do you need? He called it putting a groove in your brain. The Blue Angels, they got to build their habits before they get up in the sky, otherwise the jets crash.
I was in a Blue Angel 2 years ago. It was crazy, man.
That had to have been an adrenaline ride.
I threw up twice in the plane. I was sick the whole time and sick for 3 days afterwards. I've got a weak stomach, but it was unbelievable at the same time.
They needed to know what they were doing.
Oh, for sure.
They can't learn up there, right?
Amazing to watch them so close, just like feet away from each other.
At Mach 1 or however fast they're going?
4 or 5, whatever, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. All right, so Foley said, how do they get that good? They practice, he said, 63 to 64 repetitions to put it in your brain. And another guy wrote the talent code, Daniel Coyle.
Yeah.
He talked about perfect practice.
Yeah.
You could go excruciatingly slow as long as you do it right. And the first time you try any skill, you probably go slow. Yeah. You come to one of the training sessions that my company puts on, I'm going to say this word for word. Take your time. And then react in the moment. We have one of the negotiation tools is what we call a label. When I say something to you, I want you to label it. I don't care if you have to stare at me for 10 minutes.
Label it.
Label it. It seems like, it sounds like, it looks like. A label's a verbal observation.
Okay.
But I need you to use those exact words. And if I say, I love teaching negotiations. Now, label my emotion.
Your emotion?
The emotion that I displayed when I said, I love teaching negotiations. Label that.
What do you say, the 3 things?
It seems like, it sounds like, or it looks like. Label
Say all 3 of them?
Pick one of those 3. Say, all right, I'm going to say it again, and I want you to say word for word, it sounds like, and then fill in the blank.
Okay.
I love teaching negotiation.
It sounds like you love teaching negotiation.
Yeah. Now that's enough. Now to start with, what just happened is you demonstrated it perfectly.
Okay.
Because the important part is you have to say the first 3 words. That actually fires the brain. And you did exactly what I thought you would do, which you said it sounds like you fired the brain and then you opened yourself up to whatever your brain put in. That's why I wanted you to actually say the words, the actual specific words. Yeah. Because your brain will kick into gear and say something. Now, your first label, every time you fire the synapse, you get a little bit better. There's a substance called myelin your brain wraps this substance. It's an electrical synaptic connection in your brain. And anybody, you know, if you know anything about electricity, every time you insulate it, it fires a little bit better. Fire it 63 to 64 times, according to the Blue Angel pilot, and you get a nice circuit built, and it'll fire quickly. And then you'll start to hear it. So we'll fire it again,
Okay.
and I want you to label it again. I love teaching negotiation.
Sounds like you love teaching negotiation.
All right, now dig a little bit deeper.
Explain it more.
No, just another label, but use another adjective. It sounds like teaching, you sounds like X. I love teaching negotiation.
It sounds like you're passionate about
There you go. See, perfect.
Yeah.
Now you came up with another word. Now it stumped you for a second,
Yeah.
and you kicked in. You let that supercomputer come up with another word. And like, yeah, I am passionate about it. Now, interestingly enough, this is a way in a business negotiation, because a great business deal is an alignment of core values, just like a great personal relationship is an alignment of core values. I'm sitting on a plane flying in here. This morning, I found out more about the guy sitting on a plane next to me than he's told anybody in 20 years with this same kind of an exercise. What do you do for a living? What do you love about it? And when he tells me, I now know the guy sat next to on a plane. He's got an adopted daughter. She was adopted when she was 6 months old from China. His mother struggled with bipolar manic depressive. She committed suicide at age 17. He was raised by his grandparents. His grandfather survived the Depression. His grandfather, at one point in time, going into the Depression, owned 11 banks that all went bankrupt. He had to start completely over again. His grandfather used to tell him, I lost 11 fortunes. His grandfather loved to live off the land. They loved to make things by hand. This guy's a very successful contractor here in Los Angeles now. And he's constantly working on improving himself. Married to his first wife. They're business partners. They work together. They work in different aspects of the business. I mean, I've lost track of the number of things I found out about this guy. I know about this guy from when he was 3 years old to now. Now, in the space of what sounded like a normal social conversation, I know this guy's incredibly loyal. He's very practical. He's very hardworking. I just flew in from Vegas. He was in Vegas because he was in a competitive poker tournament. He likes reading people. He's a very hard worker. From what I know from this guy, from what this perceived social conversation, I know that we could do business together, and if we run into trouble, I have a pretty good idea of what to expect from him and how to deal with those problems if we run into trouble.
Wow.
With the very sort of thing that you and I did just now.
Wow.
You start
So when you ask stuff out. So when you ask him a question and he says something, you would use one of those responses. It seems like, sounds like, what was the third one?
Yeah, or it feels like.
It feels like.
Looks like, it could be looks like. Because I might be reading your body language. Well, it looks
it's like you're not that interested into it. Even though you said you were, your body language tells me something different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then see, if you see that in somebody's body language, your point before about Starbucks, about actually seeing a person, that same thing is going on. And they might not even know it. Every now and then I get people go like, yeah, I've been struggling with this for a while. I'm really conflicted about it. And they find themselves opening up because, most of the time if you see conflict in somebody, most people say, it'll be fine. Just keep working hard. It'll be fine.
Right.
It's all part of the journey.
Right.
Instead of actually being a great sounding board for somebody and helping them sound it out, consequently learning a lot about that person at the same time.
It sounds like you're going through a lot right now. It sounds like you're having a hard time with this. It sounds like.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And you start to become a tremendous sounding board for people.
So what happens to that person when you respond in one of those 3 or 4 ways of it sounds like, feels like, looks like? What does that person feel on the other side when you're showing that type of compassion or empathy?
They feel connected with. They feel very connected with. They feel seen. They feel like they're a person on the planet. They feel like suddenly they're not just another part of the thundering herd that nobody's paying attention to.
Yeah.
They feel at least that. Last week we're doing a training with some pretty tough business people. And one of the guys in this exercise is saying, like, I found myself talking about stuff that happened when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
He said, I gotta tell you something, I feel transformed right now. And so we stopped the group at that point in time and we said, all right, so now, based on Larry talking about that sort of a change, what kind of a guy is he to deal with? He's a pretty decent guy.
Yeah.
You now have gotten a glimpse into him as more as a total human being, which means if he does something that you perceive to be a negative move, he either did it accidentally or you misinterpreted it, which means it's okay to go back to him instead of, you know, letting the rage build up in you because you misinterpreted something or did it by accident. He's a decent guy. If he slighted you, he did it by accident.
Right.
You can go back to him and bring it up and say, hey, I gotta tell you, I got a problem with this. He's probably gonna open up because just based on this 3-minute exercise, you found out about.
He opened up then, so you probably, yeah.
He's a decent human being.
Wow.
And every human being is gonna hurt you, principally inadvertently. So you can go back to them and find out what's behind it and make them aware because they're gonna wanna know.
Yeah. Every human being's gonna hurt you?
Everybody, one way or another, is going to do something accidentally or on purpose that's gonna hurt your feeling. We're gonna interpret it as negative the vast majority of the time.
Yeah.
When in fact it was probably a complete accident. There's a really good chance they got no idea they hurt your feelings.
Right.
You need to know which one it was. Did they do it on purpose? Do they know they did it? The numbers are that they did it by accident, and the other numbers are there's a really good chance they didn't know they did it.
Right.
You know, I went to a landmark forum a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Talking about making amends with people, talking to people who've hurt you, and so one of the young ladies.
Did you go through the whole program?
Yeah. One of the young ladies in it was like, you know, when I was 7, a girl who was my cousin, they bullied me. You know, they said something that hurt me. It's 30 years. I haven't let go of it.
Wow.
So we talked about it. They talked about it, and she said she decided to go to the person and because to forgive is to let go. You know, not forgiving is like taking poison and hoping the other person dies, right?
Yeah.
You've heard that.
Yeah.
So she goes to this girl, and she says, I want you to know I forgot. The girl didn't even remember it. She got no memory. She was just being a stupid kid at the time. She had, they were
stupid at 7, right?
Yeah, they're joking around, and
wow.
So
she held on to it for that long.
30 years. The other person doesn't even know it. So by nature, we're joking around with somebody, and we accidentally say something that wounded them. If they don't feel they can talk to us, they're going to carry it for 30 years.
Yeah.
If I hurt somebody, I want to know.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm going to be like, I'm an idiot. You know,
Yeah.
I had no idea I did that to you.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Was there anything from the emotional intelligence training at Landmark that added to your curriculum of negotiations that you didn't already know or use before?
Well, not because it's all interwoven. The biggest thing that jumped out at me is it occurred to me that somebody hurt somebody else without even knowing they did it. Like in a masterclass thing, they did a great job. The masterclass people are phenomenal.
Yeah.
So we're wandering into the very tail end of it, and they got me talking about this guy that bullied me when I was a kid.
You talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and I had literally never told anybody about this.
Wow.
So it happened when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I literally had never told anybody about it.
Not even through Landmark or anything else?
Nothing.
Wow.
And they get it out of me in masterclass. They catch me off guard over it, and it's to this day, this is one of the reasons why I hate bullies. I want to become an FBI agent because, we want to go after the bad guys because the bad guys are bullies. And there's nothing I like better than getting a bully that's victimizing somebody else. And I think it was instilled in me in what happened when I was a kid. But then I started comparing that to this interaction I heard at Landmark where somebody bullied somebody else and they didn't even know they did it. And then I began thinking about like, how many people have I hurt that I didn't even know?
Right.
Like if they would have come up to me today and said, I've carried this for 40 years. And I have to have done that to somebody.
Right.
Have to have done that to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, this forgiveness thing is a two-way street, and also being, who do I need to go back to that I can think of? That and say, look, since I know that inadvertently I'm a jerk, what did I do? Right. I'm sure I did something. I had to have done something. Then it's an interesting dilemma, all sort of part of, being a better person anyway, which I know is what you're dedicated to.
It seems like it's really hard, especially if you're a public figure that has an audience, that you're going to say something or do something that's going to offend or hurt someone.
Right.
At all the times.
Yeah.
It's like you're always going to be offending someone if you have a voice. If you're sharing something, your point of view.
Right.
So your point of view is going to reach a certain audience's point of view, but not the rest of the world's point of view. So it's like you're always hurting people, aren't you?
Yeah.
And at some level, you're like offending, hurting, or frustrating
and
people.
Their hurt's going to be defensive in reaction.
Yeah.
Or they misinterpret, or you hit a button with them that you didn't even, maybe you didn't hit the button, but you came close to a button that's been hurt before.
Close.
And, and interestingly enough, we see this a lot with the procurement people that come to our training. I'm really careful to say, look, I know you guys fear procurement. And this is about dealing successfully with procurement. Mm-hmm. And we had one person in the training go, I work in procurement and you said procurement people were bad. I said, as a matter of fact, that's not what I said. But I came so close to your hot button that it hit it anyway.
Yeah.
And I spent some time with this woman, and she was afraid that was what I meant. But didn't know how to approach me.
Yeah.
And when it came up subsequently, I said, no, as a matter of fact, procurement has one of the most difficult jobs on the planet. You guys are both, you spend your days either herding cats or getting chased by villagers with pitchforks.
Right.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, it's really tough. I was just afraid that that's what you meant. Mm. It was that amygdala that we were talking about before, the 75% negative.
Yeah.
We're all equipped with that. And when someone even comes close to a criticism, then we're afraid that that's what they mean and they're hurt.
How do you take criticism?
Not well.
I've never really been good at it until, I wouldn't say I've mastered it. I think I've gotten better. Over the last 6 years, I started to really say, okay, let me not react to this criticism. Like they probably have some good intention they're trying to tell me. And maybe there's some truth there. So let me start to listen to the feedback or the criticism and say, okay, how can I be better? Is there any truth in there that really resonates, or are they coming from a place of anger of their own thing?
Criticism is mostly fear-driven.
By the person criticizing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You criticize that in point of fact, you've been hurt, you've been disappointed, you've been frustrated. Yeah. There's a lot of sayings that, never take advice from anybody you wouldn't trade places with. Criticism is a form of advice, but you're afraid to tell people how to do stuff. So you just criticize what they do. Mm-hmm. Some people, and then it becomes an addiction for some people. Criticism is not a great behavior. I know you've heard the phrase, nobody's doing better than you will ever criticize you.
Right.
They'll mentor you.
Right.
So, first of all, how do I take criticism? I got to take a step back and understand if somebody's coming at me with just a criticism, even if they ask permission to criticize, they got struggles that are worse than mine.
Right. If they ask you to give you criticism,
it'd be they're an open wound at that point in time.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Right.
They've already told me they're probably coming from a difficult place.
Gotcha.
So what I'm gonna try to do is just kind of take it easy on them and understand where they're coming from. A blog I'm a big fan of, Eric Barker writes this great blog, Barking Up the Wrong Tree.
Yeah, that's great.
Eric told me one time, for every hater, there's gonna be 10 people that are on your side. Mm-hmm. So when a critic comes up to me, I see that as there are 10 people, you're indicating to me that I'm successful with 9 other people, and I'm not going to get down on this person because it's very easy to get down on them because unfortunately they're coming from a negative place.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's good to know. What's a role-playing exercise that anyone can do with a friend that would make them a better negotiator?
Try to get whoever you're talking to say the magic 2 words, "That's right." Which means you got to summarize where they're coming from. If you, in any given interaction, if you got a point you want to make, before you make it, your trigger, you're not allowed to make your point.
So give me an example. And you want the other person you're role-playing with to say, "That's right."
Okay, so you were telling me about critics.
Yeah.
You're a high-profile guy. You're about helping other people, which means you get criticized a lot.
That's right.
And when you get criticized, I mean, I wouldn't say you're empathic, although you are. I would say you're probably more compassionate. Those are 2 different things. Empathy is, you have to have empathy to be compassionate, but empathy is not compassion. Compassion is the next step. Empathy is a compassionate thing to do, genuinely understanding somebody. But there's a real fine line there. They're distinct things. And I think you have a tremendous amount of compassion for people. So you know that when someone criticizes you, they're attacking you. But you also know that they've been hurt and they're struggling. So you want to know how to respond to them and have them better as a result of the interaction instead of coming back and making them feel worse. And you struggle with that because you're under attack, and you try not to fire back at them.
Right. Yeah. That's right. There you go. So you want to have a conversation with someone.
If you could summarize their point of view first. Summarize the other person's, when you summarize what the other person's struggling with.
In any type of deal making.
In any type of deal.
A business deal, a relationship, buying coffee, upgrading, whatever it is.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Then after that, you can make your point.
People don't have the patience. And so like, no, we're talking about something else. Like stick to the topic. And when you do that, you break a rapport, you hurt the conversation. So a part of it is being patient. Let them take you a little bit on a journey